Good evening and welcome to Transistance, your weekly news show and commentary about issues that are related to the transgender, non-binary, non-conforming, and intersex community, as well as the wider two-spirit LGBTQIAP+ community. I'm one of your hosts, Genevieve Bergman, and we want to welcome you to tonight's episode.
And I am Emily. I am another one of the hosts. I am founder of the Transverse, and I love this show, love being here. I'm going to pass it to our other host, Marla.
Hi, I'm Marla, and I still am going to call myself head writer on the Transverse, even though I've only written one script, and that's my title.
Only writer.
Only writer.
You are head writer because you're the only one who's made the effort.
Hey, and that's one of the things I love about starting a company. I told somebody that recently is, we can just assign titles. It's fine.
Oh, yeah.
All right, jumping into our first article. Let's see what we have here. State Republican lawmakers rev up.
Sound went out for me.
The sound.
I also lost Emily's sound.
Oh,
good start. Yeah. All right, let's start over.
It was just for you. I had something else up. It's fine. I can minimize that. Okay. So it won't. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
It's all fine.
So jumping into our first article, state Republican lawmakers rev up for another year of attacking transgender youth. Jeannie, take this one away.
Yeah, we do recognize that last year there was just a huge avalanche of legislation that was brought before the state legislatures across the country. I think the final number was like 35 states. I believe as of today, we have at least 7 states that have already introduced new legislature starting a new round of attacks upon transgender people, especially transgender youth. We've had, we talked a little bit about the Arizona bill from Senator Wendy Rogers that would require school employees to out transgender youth to parents, while also banning health professionals from prescribing puberty blockers or other hormone-based gender-affirming care. It specifically targets puberty blockers because, for the most part, that is what is prescribed to minors. They are not typically prescribed hormone blockers and a hormone replacement therapy. So we're looking at that one. In Arizona, there is a bill prohibiting transgender girls from participating in school sports. Alabama would ban healthcare professionals from providing gender-affirming care to transgender youth, people all the way up to 19 years old. Let's see. And in South Dakota, transgender youth would be prohibited from using restrooms that align with their gender identity. And I think that catches almost all of them. But what we're looking at is the same stuff, except for the outing of transgender youth and the complete banning of hormone blockers. In the past, it has not been a complete ban, but this was almost a total removal.
As we've discussed before, the hormone blockers save lives. Of course, this is hypocritical for a party that says that they are pro-life. I'm particularly upset about 2 things you mentioned. One was the 19-year-old thing. That's absurd. I mean, what right do they have to say that at 18, when you're an adult and have all these adult responsibilities, that you can't go through with that?
Right.
That's absolutely insane to me. The other one was Arizona with the sports bill, specifically targeting transgender girls.
Yes.
To specifically target transgender girls it just says everything about misogyny and trans misogyny. Like, these laws shouldn't be being put forward anyway, but I mean, if you're going to do it, at least do it evenly.
Right.
Um,
But that's, I mean, this is the first bill that has really just finally come out and been upfront and honest. We've known that this was always about transgender girls. This was always about transgender women. This was never about trans men or boys because nobody is making a fuss about that in any of the arguments.
yeah, because it's all misogyny and transmisogyny, and it's belittling and infantilizing of uh, women and young girls, and it is. I'm just horrified by the entire, just the entire thing. I mean,
Right.
also it's school. It's school sports. Is this really like we're going to treat this like it's the Olympics? It's like,
Yeah.
I don't. Bleh. So
Well,
tired of this crap.
yeah, and I've voiced this here on the show before that I just want to know what their argument is and where they're coming from. And the problem is that they're coming from all angles. They're choosing
Right.
to make the attacks from all sides. They say that trans women should not be able to use women's restrooms and all this kind of stuff. But then they're banning trans children from using the bathrooms at the schools, and it's just like, well, clearly 8-year-olds are not there to rape other 8-year-olds. I mean, that's not what's
Right.
happening. So what's your argument here? But they're just hitting everything from every side so that it muddies the conversation and just demonizes us all the way around to birth, basically.
Right.
And I don't know. I just it gets to the point of like it's hard to figure out what to rebut. Where to fight back on, because it's just throwing everything up against the wall. And like Marla pointed out, they're not even they're not even trying to kind of hide anything in any way. They're just like,
Right.
we're just specifically going after trans females.
Yeah. And that's why the argument needs to be removed from trying to put out the little fires and go after the big fire, which is the eradication of transgender people from the public sphere.
Mm-hmm.
That is what they are working to do. They just want to remove transgender people. It doesn't matter if it's a bathroom, a sports, if it's in the medical arena. You're looking at the removal of access for transgender people across the board.
Mm-hmm.
If we start seeing any kind of movement against public access services, at that point we know that's what they're shooting for.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean,
I,
at this point, we know that's what they're shooting for.
well, right, but
Yeah.
I do want to say this, that if you are in the states of Arizona, Alabama, Indiana, Kentucky, Oklahoma, New Hampshire, or South Dakota, please contact your legislators and your senators in the local areas. Please don't let this seem like it's somebody else's problem. If you are a transgender or non binary person, this is for us. If you are a non conforming person, if you are an intersex person, this is still our fight. If you are a cisgender ally, we need you out there with your voice speaking on our behalf. We need you calling and letting your politicians know that this is unacceptable, that this is not going to be the America that we are all told that this is going to be, a land of opportunity, a land of rights, a land of freedom. Because if transgender people are removed from the public access, if we are removed from the public sphere, then we are eliminating a true part of who we are, going all the way back throughout history and culture.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I guess it's that the internalized transphobia, or whatever it is, just like the self doubt that, regardless, through all of this, the part that really upsets me is how intersex folks are getting dragged into all of this, and it's just like
Mm-hmm.
they have the indisputable medical evidence of
Right.
of the legitimacy of theirs. I get that we're still a ways from public understanding of the legitimacy of being trans, but it's indisputable with intersex people, and yet they're getting sucked into all of this with us, and it's just like that part for whatever reason seems to be the part that's breaking my heart the most.
Right. And I think we need to make a clarification here. We do not identify intersex people and binary transgender people as the same. We recognize intersex people as a group unto themselves. They are a demographic unto themselves. Binary transgender people, a demographic to themselves. Non-binary are a demographic to themselves. But when we talk about the entire concern of the transgender universe, meaning that everybody who does not simply identify as male or female, this is all of our fights. This is something we all have to stand together on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because the attack ends up hurting us all, and yeah,
Yes.
it's intersex folks and the children. Those are the two that it's absurd that it
Right.
affects them to this level. All right, it looks like I skipped over one. Let's go back to Britain for something similar here, and talk about how a Tory plot to gut human rights law should horrify LGBT plus Brits. Law professor warns. What's going on here, Jeannie?
In the UK, there has been a proposal brought forward that would overhaul the Human Rights Act of 1998. That incorporated the European Convention for Human Rights. Now, the LGBT plus community has been able to access those human rights and find more equality and equity under the law. But at the same time, they have still had to fight for so much of the ground that they have been able to achieve since 1998. Now, because of the push within Great Britain to limit transgender people's access to services, there is now an outright proposal to actually scale back human rights legislation within the UK, and that would directly impact the LGBTQ plus community because they have been able to access their rights through that. So this is just,
I
crazy.
think that the part about it that I think drives me the most wild, and the people can actually hear it and be like, yeah, that sounds good, is basically, from my understanding, is this law has a lot of open end to it, and it allows itself to evolve as our society evolves
Right.
on rights and issues, which is very unlike a lot of things here in America. I mean, sometimes it has to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will decide, okay, we're actually going to apply it to these other things, but oftentimes they do not. This law allows that to happen. Who hears this law allows itself to keep evolving and learning and developing to meet current day standards and knowledge and belief and goes, no, that's not okay. We can't be having that. Like, that's the part that blows my mind, that someone
Right.
can put that out there as their talking point about scaling this thing back, and people can be like, oh, that sounds great. Let's go backwards.
Yeah. And that's really that's the push right now, is to be very revisionist and going back and setting clocks back to a previous golden age time that is interpreted by people. And the golden age was simply a time where so much was hidden, so much was squirreled away, and the honest truth was not dealt with. The golden age was the day that, that led into the civil rights movement, to be able to say, look, women need to be treated equally. The Black community needs to be treated equally. People with disabling conditions or limiting conditions need to be treated differently. The 70s and the 80s saw the reversal of the golden age because people who were on the outside of power were now being given recognition and receiving what they needed to live on. So that's what we're seeing the UK trying to roll back to what people are saying is a better time or a better opinion. And it's like, yeah, it's all better because we hid all of the stuff we didn't like.
Yeah.
Well, it's better because it was easier for them. They didn't have to think. They didn't have to worry about treating people with respect and all of that. Like something made me think of it the other day. The whole thing with the Trump campaign, and he kept blowing stuff off as quote unquote locker room talk. That in some circumstances, somewhere, it's okay to be a bigoted a-hole, and it's just like,
yeah,
and they're pushing back about the fact that they don't have that anymore, that there aren't
right.
safe spaces for them to discriminate against people and to just be, like I said, general a-holes. And it's funny how much they're fighting to like you said, turn back the clock to that, where it was easier and people just shut up and stayed to themselves and didn't stand up for themselves and try to
Right.
get equal rights, that the people in power had the power and that was it, and nobody questioned it, which I thought was sort of the whole point of the way that our country is set up, that we're supposed to be able to do that. But maybe I misunderstood something. I don't know. Our next article takes us to a bill banning, again, here now we get into a wonderful expose on hypocrisy, where the bill banning unnecessary surgeries for intersex children fails. Let's talk about this a bit, Jeannie.
This irritates me to no end because State Senator Scott Wiener, sorry, that's the name, I'm not making this up, from San Francisco, introduced a bill in California which would make it impossible to do any unnecessary surgeries on intersex children before the age of 12. Now, very quickly, in all of the bills that were written in the last year that prohibited any gender affirming medical care for trans youth, all of them provided for an exception in the case of intersex children who are born, and it specifically allowed for the non-consensual surgery on intersex children and newborns. And when I say non-consensual, this was the idea of, these children are people. These people who argue that they're people in the womb, the moment they get born, they're not people anymore. They love to say the fetus doesn't have a voice for itself, and so we speak for that voice. And I'm getting very, very angry, y'all, and I may have to step out for this one because I am getting livid on this.
Yeah.
All of these. Go ahead, Marla.
No, it's so absurd. I mean, I think you were trying to get to that point that we, in the case of a trans child, where both the child and obviously the parent, because at the age of 10 or 12, the only way they're going into anything medical is with the parents' consent. We keep that's where both parties are consenting. A child can only consent so much, but a child does have a sense of their gender. That's a scientific fact. But we don't allow medical treatment in that case, even puberty blockers. But in the case of intersex children, we literally allow them to have surgeries against their will. And they're oftentimes extremely problematic when they get older and they find out that this was done to them. And the the point of all of this is it feels like they're trying to erase not just trans people but intersex people. It just seems like all of this is sort of to make a set way. You're a female or you're male, and that's it. When you're born, we'll fix you, and if you want to be fixed later, we won't let you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that,
And that's
your genitalia is all that matters. And if we fix your genitalia to something, that's what you are, and that's what you have to be. Yeah, and I love that it's even a little bit more extreme than you talked about with consent, because when you're talking about a child, there's a child, a doctor, and a parent. There's three people that are working together on this, all consenting. In many cases with intersex children, it's just the doctor. A lot of times they will do it without the parent's knowledge, or without listening to what the parent's concerns are in the issue. And for some reason that is okay. But when the rights of the child and the parent are involved, then that's something that we as a society just can't abide.
Yeah. Senator Scott Wiener brought legislation before the California Senate that would prohibit unnecessary surgeries on intersex children. And Scott Wiener has made it very public that they are standing with intersex people in this fight. And when this legislation went through last year, they were making the exception to say that we are willing to do gender designating surgery on newborns and infants and children, but we will not allow them to reach an age of consent on what to do with their own body. We are going to control that. And now California cannot get the votes to outlaw these surgeries. Just like Emily said, doctors will make a call based on a set number of millimeters of visible genital tissue, meaning that if a penis is over a certain number of millimeters, they are a male. If it is under that, they are female. And if their genitalia is ambiguous, they will elect to push for surgery under the presumption that that child will have a more difficult time trying to be successfully integrated into society. And they manipulate the feelings of new parents that are already emotional. They're already concerned about their child. And now you have a doctor, a professional coming to them and saying, your child has this thing about them. We weren't anticipating this. So if we want to help this child be more successful in adapting to society, we urge you to have this surgery done. And that is unacceptable.
Yeah, the way they put it on, they put a lot of pressure on the parents to make the decision that it's sort of a dire situation that must be dealt with now. It's absurd, and it's really harmful for the children, because they're going to get it wrong half of the time. They just are. That's just that's just odds. And so I don't know why society is so willing to go with that when the odds of success in there are no greater than 50%.
Right.
Marla, did you have another comment on it?
Not at all.
Okay.
I think we've covered this
Then moving right along. Well, we talked that's another article on the same
Yeah,
thing.
the last two were both articles talking about the same issue.
Okay, yeah, we got a couple of them right in a row. Let's see. See if we can find the next one. Okay, police. There we go. Police investigating deaths of 2 black trans women in the first 2 days of 2022. We saw at the end of 2021, we were counting up the numbers right until the very end, and it's just a continuation of that. What insight do you have from this article, Jeannie?
Really, this isn't anything more than just beginning the counter again. I did not see any new notices within the last few days, but we are definitely looking at, we started 2022 off, and we are already marking the count of how many we've lost.
I mean, I don't have much. I mean, if anyone is expecting it to be a lower number than last year, I have some bad news
Mm-hmm.
for you, unless something drastic happens to normalize us. And even then, there's going to be backlash.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, I agree with you, Marla. I think the numbers are going to continue to go up because now we are a news item. We sell.
Yeah. I mean, we have people out there who are basically pretending like we're infringing on their rights by just asking to be treated like humans and with respect.
That's
But
the default with any time a group fights for their rights. The pushback is that, oh, you're taking away my rights to give the rights to them. It's always about what the people in power are losing by giving rights and thus power to these communities that they like to trample on.
yeah,
Ready for the next one, or did you have more on that?
right along.
Okay. Brave 10-year-old girl confronts homophobic grandparents from after gay uncle banned from Christmas. This sounds like a nice one.
Um, so the names are held for confidentiality for the families. A 28-year-old man. We're not even talking about teenagers here. We're talking about a 28-year-old man who was disowned by his parents because he is gay. He has not spoken to them in 8 years, but he has tried to maintain a close relationship with his sister and niece, who is 10 years old. So at a big Christmas gathering, to which he is not invited, the guy says, my niece asked why I never go to my parents' Christmas. And I replied with the excuse I've used for years, which is I had to work. But the niece, smarter than most adults give 10-year-olds credit for, argued that it didn't make sense because the gatherings sometimes happen on Christmas when he should have had the day off. Love kids. They are too damn smart for adults. So his niece became very upset that he did not want to, he didn't want to be with them. And so he began to tell her, oh, sorry, y'all. He began to tell her that Grandma and Grandpa don't like who he dates. So they asked me not to go to Christmas. She was very upset and went to her grandparents the next day and essentially read them the riot act. and yelled at, basically just yelled at them really, really harshly. Then the parents called the girl's mom, and yelled at her for giving the child access to her uncle. Um, the sister blamed the man for causing a family fight.
That's the most disappointing part about this whole story to me.
Yeah. And then brought the niece into it, the daughter into it, and said that she was involved in it. So basically weaponizing the child.
While at the same time making the child feel bad for starting something that made the adults upset, which is something that was really traumatizing for kids.
Right. I mean, they look up to parents for and grandparents as those people who are their security.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden now they're like, well, you can't do that. You can't talk about him. You can't talk to him anymore.
What a terrible family. A terrible group of people.
Yeah.
Except the uncle.
The uncle and the niece seem to be great.
And the niece.
I'm heartbroken. I wonder what's going to happen to her. Is she, are they going to beat this out of her, or is she going to still stand up and say, no, I love this person in my life, and I don't know what's wrong with y'all, but they're great.
We can only hope.
Mm-hmm.
We can only hope.
All right. Students agree to de-gay GSA after enraged parents attacked the club's sponsor as a predator? Oh, another great one here. What's going on here, Jeannie?
Lakeland Preparatory School in Tennessee. Students got together to create a gay straight alliance club. But then the conservative parents came out and just continually attacked them, as well as the adult faculty member who was sponsoring the group and supporting the group. Parents claimed that having a organization, student-led organization, which was either gay straight alliance or gender and sexualities alliance, they claimed that this was just an effort to indoctrinate kids into being gay. They then went on the attack against the faculty member, saying that she was just a predator, trying to, just like I encounter this crap on TikTok, people saying that, adults who participate in this lifestyle are just grooming children for this lifestyle. We all know that's not how this happens, but we are fighting a very, very, very ignorant and very, very, very indoctrinated group.
Yeah, and that's it. It always goes back to that hypocrisy of like their whole philosophy is indoctrination into their belief system, and then I think that's what causes it. That's what triggers it, because then they assume that that's how other groups work.
Projection.
Yeah. This is how we work, so it must be how everyone else works, because we indoctrinate our people, and we just beat things into their heads. We just pound it in until it sticks, and so that must be how everybody else works. It's funny when they step so far out there and just really show how ignorant they are. They just put all their cards on the table, and they say, like, this is my complete and utter lack of education and understanding of reality. And the fact that it plays so well, that there are so many people that buy into it, and I guess again it goes back to that, to they're successful about their indoctrination, and they just play it off of like that's what we're all up to as well.
Yeah.
I mean, one of these parents is I'm just going to name the bastard. Matt Thee said, "Where do we draw the line?" and says it's inexcusable for children to learn about sexuality at that age. No, like what world? I mean, you learn anatomy, you learn there's sex ed even in like 8th grade, like very basic sex ed in a lot of schools.
Right.
There's they see sexuality on TV all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If they're religious, they learned Adam and Eve. You know, it's absolute BS. They just don't want to know children to know that there's a sexuality besides the sexuality that they deem normal.
Yeah.
Right.
It's nothing past that. Also, the teacher that was accused, like the students, there was something like the teacher was in like the car with a student, like talking to them because the student was having issues because they are queer and they want to join the GSA and they needed help. And even the student's grandmother says that teacher's not a predator, they're a friend, and that they're helping that student. And yet still these conservatives, here's the person they're accusing, the person who they are saying is the victim, and the grandmother, an adult watching this supposed victim, all saying that there's no kind of predatory anything, there's no kind of victim anything happening here, and yet these people will still shout it from the rooftops because they don't care.
Well, they do care. What they care about is witch hunts.
Yeah.
These are the exact same tactics that were used in Salem against any woman who seemed to be not fulfilling her societal role. This is what was you. These were the tactics that were used of divorced women in the 50s and 60s because they weren't fulfilling their role of being faithful to their husbands, and every divorced woman was a scandalous woman. These are witch hunts to try and badger and bully people into a single form of acceptable society, and it's ridiculous. It is absurd.
I mean, I wanted this last week. Regimentation of society is a fascist trait.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then I don't know much on the history, but like, how long ago was it a normal practice for a woman to be married off at 13 and 14 and be a mother by 16? Like, I don't feel like it was that long ago that was the norm. And now
it was still happening in the 1930s.
Okay.
In the United States.
And now 13 and 16-year-olds are not allowed to know anything about sexuality or how to, or have the ability to express themselves or explore what any of it could be. It's just like, it's wonderful. It's so confusing.
Yeah.
It's so hard to fight just complete ignorance and illogical thought because you just don't have any ground to stand on to fight against it, because you just can't get to a place where it makes sense to begin with.
Right.
All right. I feel like I get repeating myself here a lot on these. I'm going to try to hold off on that.
Well, there's not much you can say to the same shit piled on top of each other.
They're hypocrites. They're fascists. Like that's it. We're not like that's every article.
That's just the pat answer to everything. Okay, and in more fascist hypocritical news, the UK extends pardons to all convicted abolished same-sex crimes. That's a nice one.
We talked about this last week, that in South Carolina there is a man who is still on the sex offenders registry because he was found guilty of having consensual sex with his partner, like in the early 2000s. Well, 2008, I think, was the year. He was exonerated from the crime, but he is still on the registry of sex offenders. In the UK, this news piece is about recognizing that the criminal convictions are defunct, that anyone who was incriminated in a consensual same-sex relationship, they now have a full pardon from their crime. and having that conviction wiped from their records.
I mean, I don't think there's like that much to say about this. Clearly, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a sort of a
It
duh.
took way too long. Apparently, before that, there's only 9 laws that you could petition to have wiped, and like anything else that was same sex did not
Yeah,
fall under that. The nice thing about this is, from my understanding, it's automatic. They don't even have to petition it. It'll
that's
just be
wonderful.
wiped.
Police refer trans woman to prosecutors for using women's bathroom. Where is this and what is going on here, Jeannie?
Osaka, Japan. We've already talked about how Japan has some of the most restrictive rules and laws regarding transgender people. We did talk about them, electing a transgender man into public office, but police have pushed a case over to prosecutors because a transgender woman used a women's restroom, public restroom in Osaka, Japan. And a customer complained that a transgender woman in her 40s was using the restroom. The customer said, I couldn't use the restroom because I was afraid that there was a man wearing women's clothes using it. And so the employees called the police. The police took the person into custody. They can charge her with trespassing. But because she was carrying a male gender marker on her ID, she's not legally allowed to use the women's restroom. So they're turning it over to the prosecutors to decide if this is what they are going to do, if they're going to continue to pursue charges against her.
Yeah. I mean, it's you can't help but think that the reason these restrictive laws are there is, I mean, it's not just, limiting people, it's pushing people to the brink, because now, unless you are in Japan unmarried and sterilized, if that's not dehumanizing, I don't know what is. And you don't have children over 20, well then, as a transgender person, unless you meet all the criteria, now your choice is go into the men's restroom and get whatever's going to happen in there if you're a trans woman, or go into the women's restroom and get arrested. There's no options.
Right.
There's only been 7,000 successful gender marker changes between 2003 and 2019. That seems absurd, and it seems it's so purposefully restrictive, and it's just getting people assaulted, harassed, and in this case, maybe imprisoned.
Yeah.
Just because they have to pee.
Yeah.
Yeah, the I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even comment because it's another one of those like the selfishness here, because they're concerned about their safety, whereas if we're forced to use a men's restroom, we are unsafe. I'm gonna skip over.
I actually got into a back and forth with somebody on TikTok about this one day, and they were challenging the presence of a transgender woman in the women's restroom. And I said, hey, I want to put you in a situation. I stepped back from the camera. I was in full femme presentation. I said, if I'm dressed like this and you see me walk up to a restroom and somebody says, no, you can't use that one, or you see somebody dragging me out physically and beating on me from the restroom, what are you going to do? You know, it's like I'm here in a full female presentation with my mask on. It's very difficult to identify me as anything other than a woman. If I'm being drugged out of the bathroom or I'm being prohibited from entering the bathroom, what is this person going to do? How are they going to act watching that? And I think no one stops to think about that for a single moment. Because the moment that they are confronted with the reality of somebody's life or rights being infringed upon, they are now responsible for something.
Yeah. I mean, I always pointed out, I mean, it's always so double standard again, where, you know, it's kind of like you point someone to someone who is trans mask and is, you know, basically fully transitioned, and you go, is this who you want in the women's restroom?
Yeah.
There's no way their answer is going to be yes. Not in any world.
Yeah. But the funny thing is that I have watched a couple of trans masculine individuals doing lives on TikTok, and I interact with them on an ongoing basis. And I have watched people in the crowd where they're anonymous say, oh, no. You deserve to go to the women's restroom. Bull fucking shit. There is no way they would be allowed to walk into a women's restroom at all.
Yeah, that's why I don't understand why that isn't an easier argument there. Just like, well, okay, let's just send all the big ass burly bearded masculine as all F trans men in there and see how long these bathroom bills stand. And then I'm reminded of the earlier stories where they're just singling out just trans women, and these bills are okay apparently. So it's just like even that won't do it. That won't do it.
Right.
I mean, there's even so many cases of cis women, mask lesbians, cis mask lesbians who have the police called on them or are harassed for being in the women's restroom.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the absurd part, is that we have cis lesbian sisters who are catching the fallout because people want to remove us from society.
All right, I think we're going to get a positive one here. I think we're going to get one that's actually really legitimately positive. Okay. A gay kiss-a-thon forced Six Flags to drop its homophobic anti-kissing policy. Please, Jeannie, tell me this is a positive article straight through.
This is a fun one. So Mexico City, the Six Flags amusement park there, had a policy against affectionate behavior. On December 29th, a gay couple were waiting in line for a ride, and they were just kissing and being very public with their affection. And the security guards began to harass them. Now, the couple was not kicked out of the park, but there had been a straight couple in line who had also been kissing, and the guards had nothing to do with them. The park director came out and said that all forms of displays of affection were prohibited. It was in the regulations. We reviewed the regulations, and that paragraph does not appear. So,
okay.
um, they pointed out, took him out of line, threatened to take him out of the park. But then somebody on Twitter pointed out that even Six Flags ads in Mexico feature straight couples kissing.
Oops.
There was never a policy that states you can't kiss at Six Flags. So they were looking for damage control. In response to that, a group of people got on the internet and started working it up so that they had a kiss in scheduled at Six Flags. And so people showed up to do this. But basically, you know, this was just calling out that hypocrisy that we've been talking about. Six Flags is, you know, it is an American corporation also, and just as guilty of that kind of crap as it is in Mexico. There's just a higher line of public standards just because of the Catholic Church's influence there.
Yeah, you know, honestly, when I think about the situation, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not, you know, against public displays of affection by any means, but like we've all been in line in an amusement park, and there's a couple of teenagers or whatever that are just absolutely going at it, and you're like, all right, calm down, inappropriate, right? And you're just like, it doesn't matter what the genders involved are. It's just like it's a little bit much and a little inappropriate, but. I have a feeling that this was much more mild than that. And so it's nice to see that they made some progress on
Look, there's an entire website for the inappropriate stuff that people do at Disney. So, come on. People
I will
going to
never look
human.
at that site. I do not want my golden place sullied by these images and these thoughts.
Having known people who worked at Disney, there's stuff that happens in places that, like, oh boy.
Well,
I mean, if you play Cinderella, you know.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why on Pirates
there.
of the Caribbean it says pirates, you know, dead men tell no tales. You know, it's like, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing.
As someone who worked at Six Flags for a number of years, I just want to tell everyone, don't go to Six Flags. It's a garbage place. Like, it is run by the worst people. It is a dump. The people in charge are so immature, so self-centered, so uncaring about literally anything, even creating a good experience for park guests. And if the security situation in the Mexico Six Flags is anything like the Six Flags I worked at, other than the person in charge of security, all the security guards are like 18 years old, and that's who's making these decisions to be like, gay couple, get out of line.
Yeah,
Nice.
There's a lot of that happening where, the people making the decisions on the fly are maybe not the most qualified and don't have the best level of sensitivity training in these situations. Yeah. Oh, the chat's lighting up about Magic Mountain and you know, who favors which and all of that. I'll just say that I know for a fact that people that work at Disney call pass holders pass holes because of their self-righteous entitlement, and so I did get myself I regularly was getting a pass, a season pass, so I do have a pass hole sticker on the back of my car because I'm like, yeah, I go so much, I've got to embrace that.
I did recently hear, because I was in Orlando over Christmas. I did hear someone being like, because now Disney, like, you have to have like reservations, and there's all these extra steps because of COVID. And I heard someone talking about this woman who did not do any what she was supposed to do, but they let her in because they were like, oh yeah, she has like, I forgot what the number of points were, but apparently it equates to $60,000 spent on Disney. And I'm just like, so of course she marched in there and was just like, I have spent so much, I can just walk into the park. And they of course allowed it, but
Shannon in chat says, "Hey Marla, don't hate on 18-year-old security guards. Some of us did our best."
Okay.
Principal banned student from mentioning he's gay in school newspaper. Senior spotlight profile.
Yeah.
This sounds similar to something else I heard very recently that we dealt with in the Transverse. What was this about?
Yeah. So, a 17-year-old student at Tully High School in Syracuse, New York, was featured to be in the school's senior spotlight in their newspaper. And one of the questions that Tyler Johnson was asked was, the biggest challenge he has had to overcome in his life. And what he wrote was, the biggest challenge I faced was growing up gay and coming out. I had to learn how to become comfortable in my own skin, how to stay strong through bullying and all the negative experiences I had while trying to navigate through life. And then the principal called him into the office and told him that he couldn't come out as gay in the newspaper because the school has a policy against mentioning sexuality, orientation, religion, or illegal drugs.
Those seem similar.
Yeah. I am very, very curious to see how many of their seniors talked about that they really enjoyed their church or their youth group, or that yeah. So anyway, he was basically told that he could change his answer or pull it, and he pulled it.
Good for him.
I agree. Well,
so I hate
Better
people.
yet, change your answer to my greatest struggle was having to fight this school on whether or not I could mention my sexuality in this very paper.
Love it.
I hate people.
That's the bottom line. It's easy to get to here on the show. It's just like, yeah, most of the people are trash.
Yeah, it's like, why people?
The Transverse presents I Hate People every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with Jeannie, Emily, and Marla.
Yeah, we need to change the title of the show to "People Are Trash," and this is why.
Yeah,
people are terrible, and here's
and the next one only gets worse. The next
God.
story is even worse.
Okay, all right, I'll go get it. Hi. School bans teaching about gender fluidity or the mainstream narrative on COVID. Oh. So
again, very similar. Two very similar things.
So, Centner Academy, a private school in Miami, has made it a policy to not allow the subjects of critical race theory, gender fluidity, or mainstream narrative surrounding COVID. It has labeled these as hot topics that many schools are now choosing to teach as factual rather than the theories that they are.
So they're just banning reality from the school. That's
been the Republicans' goal forever.
The claim is that they don't teach what to think. They teach how to think by removing half the fucking thought process.
The research one? The intake of knowledge one? Okay, hold on. I want to go. There's some wording in this that I have some real issue with. What do they mean, no teaching mainstream? Or what do they say? They said
mainstream narratives.
So what? You can teach fringe hoax narratives? Conspiracy narratives?
Yeah. Yep.
I love the thought that, like, the fact that it's understood as fact, scientific fact, and the general population accepts it is the basis for why it's bad.
Right?
You can teach that there are tiny octopus aliens in the vaccine, but you can't teach how viruses work.
Right. Now, Rosa, do not start the all birds are drones stuff, please. We do not need that in the chat tonight. Come on. Here's where you just get me lit up again. I'm just not as messed up as I was earlier. You cannot at all teach people how to think without giving them the ability to weigh all of the evidence. If you remove the ability to present evidence, you are teaching people what to think. Period. That is called indoctrination. Critical thinking, the ability to make a choice on what you think about, requires all of the information to be presented.
Can we move away from Miami?
Please.
I live in California. I've moved as far away from Miami as I can get. What's a Delta up to here? Delta says non-binary customers, in this case, one customer in particular, can only fly as male or female despite valid ID and documentation.
Yes.
What the actual hell?
So, a mother of a non-binary customer who was trying to fly on Delta Airlines says that the airline discriminated against them after she was unable, the mother was trying to buy the ticket for them, and she was told that unless they inaccurately marked their gender as male or female, they couldn't buy the ticket. So the TSA requires that the boarding pass reservation has to match your state issued ID. The TSA accepts X as a gender marker on state IDs. Unless you're from the state of Oklahoma, but I won't get into that. So, I mean, here you have a company, a major company in the airline industry, creating a system whereby a person with legal documents marked appropriately refuse to acknowledge that in their purchasing that the TSA, which regulates their industry, has already said these are acceptable.
Is this a company's rights over government's rights sort of a thing, where they can limit and discriminate in any way that they feel, and ignore what the government has set forth?
So the mother calls the TSA. The TSA says call Delta. She calls Delta. So a supervisor comes on the line. She says, "Hey, why can't I do this?" And the supervisor says, "Our system only marks male or female. You have to use one of those." And
ineptitude. That's a great excuse.
The response was, "That's the policy." So I won't be flying Delta anytime soon.
I have so many Sky Miles.
I promise that we will honor Delta Sky Miles at Transverse Air. I'm just saying.
Oh, thank you.
Shall we move past this?
Sure.
It's a happier story.
Good. Let's. Oh God. Let's hope. Let's hope that I'm on the right one. Then Canada's armed forces to ditch gendered uniforms to make sure all members are safe and protected. How does ditching the uniforms, the gendered uniforms, make them all safe and protected, Jeannie?
Well, first of all, it is going to allow them to dress in the way that is most comfortable for them. So, gender-specific accessories will no longer be required. So, if there were a specific thing that women had to wear, they no longer have to. It's going to eliminate binary uniform and appearance choices, allowing non-binary service members pick and choose their clothing. Now, there will probably be a continued dress code that will be the appropriate uniform, but they're going to get away from that whole idea of gendering a uniform. For example, I know that within the United States, I believe it is Colonel Fram was talking about this in the Air Force, that she, couldn't wear the uniform that she wanted to wear. It wasn't comfortable for her. I've read of others who, they were on testosterone and they were very physical and very masculine appearing, but they had to wear skirts because that was the uniform. And, Canada says, no, we're going to do something about that. We're going to make sure that the uniforms are uniform.
I see what you did there. I think that one broke Marla. She has no comment based on the bad joke.
I'm holding myself back from saying I'll do the puns from now on. I'll do the wordplay from now on, but I didn't say it, so good job, Marla.
The head writer has set forth, I think, a policy of wanting to kind of get a better grip on the puns here. Okay, noted. Now we're go ahead.
Sorry, I had an intrusion by something on that webpage, and so I lost that browser, so I don't have the medical news up in front of me.
Okay. Well, all right. Can you get it up while we talk about Ireland here?
Absolutely.
Okay. Ireland's sole gender clinic is so short-staffed it can't even deal with 300 patients a year. This sounds pretty typical to what we've heard in the UK, but a more extreme example. Are you up now, Jeannie?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I'll do it. I got it. I got this.
Go, Marla.
So in Ireland, they are claiming that their sole gender clinic can only handle 150 patients a year. That's 3 a week. While there are approximately 50,000 transgender individuals in Ireland, they say they became overwhelmed starting in 2014 with what is known as, I had never heard this before, the trans tipping point, which is when Laverne Cox started to become very visible and popular.
Yeah.
And the rest of us began to be indoctrinated.
Correct. Yeah. Thanks, Laverne. And I mean, first of all, my first point is how 3 a week? How's that even possible? I don't even understand. Like, if you're open more than 3 days, like,
Right.
surely that should be fine. And the other issue that is brought up with it is that Ireland's healthcare service, in trying to create a specific branch of the service to serve trans youth, hired a psychiatrist, which causes a lot of um, hesitance for the transgender community to trust the service, because, as we all know, psychiatrists are the one who like to consider being transgender a mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones who set up all those absurd credentials, criteria you had to meet, up until the 90s.
Right.
So, whether or not that person is responsible for this out purposefully or just by being awful at their job, this is still where we are. 150 a year. There's no other gender clinic, and there are 50,000 approximate trans individuals in Ireland.
Yeah, I agree that the numbers just don't work there. How do you get through 3 people a week? Like, um, maybe we need to talk to some trans people from Ireland. Maybe if you do get in, the care is so amazing. They're like so dedicated to you that they just simply cannot get through all of those people.
They give you an 8-hour massage every time you walk in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just attend to your every need for 2.5 days.
So, yeah, I don't think the National Health Service is that adept.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Trans woman could be first American in stupid ads in federal prison to receive gender affirming surgery. Sort of a good and bad at the same time. What's going on here?
This is wild because Christina Iglesias is a trans woman who has been incarcerated within the Texas Federal Bureau of Prisons and has been incarcerated for 27 years. When she first went to prison in 1994, she informed them that she was transgender and has been working to gain access to gender affirming surgery since 2016. And last year, she launched a legal action against the Bureau of Prisons. She was finally moved to a female facility. Now remember, she went into prison in 1994. Last year, she was finally moved to a female prison after she had suffered severe physical and sexual violence. She said that the BOP is violating her rights under the 8th Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment, by not allowing her to undergo that surgery. So finally, on December 27th, Judge Nancy Rosenstengel issued a decision in the district court for the Southern District of Illinois and basically said that the BOP's Bureau of Prisons Transgender Executive Council must evaluate Iglesias for gender-affirming surgery, and that must be complete by January 24th. So now is just the process of getting that surgery approved. Wasn't a guarantee, but if this is done, it would be the first of its kind.
And I just ask on this, when's the tipping point where we'll get to that level where it doesn't take violence against us to cause people to actually act? When does that moment hit?
I mean, there's violence against us and they still don't act and shrug their shoulders. So, I mean, it's a long way off as far as I can tell.
Let's be honest. It has to happen for the Black community first.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed.
We do not have a right to go to the front of the line before an entire race of people who have suffered for over 400 years. They get it first. We don't have a right to it first.
That's a great
The
point.
Black community has lived long enough with violence done to them. And we have to stand in solidarity with that community and let the world know that violence against that community must stop.
And it's trans people of color who are experiencing the most, as far as, trans people go, the most of the abuse and the violence. So I absolutely agree with you there. Oh, I made the stupid mistake of trying to find out what could have sent her to prison for that long. Did anyone else go to that length?
I didn't know.
Are we in for a ride here?
I can't find enough detail to know what this is about. She was imprisoned for making terroristic threats against the government of Britain. Something doesn't sit right with me about a 27-year plus sentence and what this could have been, that it was that serious that she would end up in prison for this long.
Yeah.
Okay, well, now you have me completely.
Like, what happened here?
All
Yeah.
right, do we need to kind of put a pin in that and circle back to that? Maybe revisit that either later in the show or on
I'm going to have to go through newspapers.com because I could not find any immediate articles.
Yeah.
It happened in 1994.
Oh, well. So, here we go.
Did you find it?
Uh-huh. You won't like the source. This is
the Daily Mail.
4W.
Okay.
She made an anthrax attack on British officials. She is serving a 240-month sentence for threatening to use a weapon of mass destruction against officials at the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office in London.
For threatening.
Now, wait a minute.
Okay, but the years don't add up. I saw the same thing. She's been in it for 27 years, but she had a 20-year sentence. I mean, are there other charges?
Iglesias committed the offense while imprisoned for the similar crime of threatening to commit an act of terrorism in 1997. Hang on.
Still deserves surgery. Still cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah. I'm trying to find this. Okay. Now, please forgive me. This I'm reading this from the archive of the South Florida Sun Sentinel. A man who, while jailed in Miami in July 2002, sent what he said was anthrax to British officials, has pleaded guilty to an offense that could mean life in prison. Kenneth West pleaded guilty to the charge of using that. Now, let me see if I can get the rest of the story. The rest of the story is not coming up. Why isn't the rest of the story coming up? All right, so let me go back. That may be why you can't find it, Marla, is because it dead named.
Dead named. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'll look into it a little bit more, but it looks like a terroristic threat was made in 94, went to prison in 97, did it again
from prison
2000 while in prison.
Clearly didn't learn the lesson there. Yeah, fool me once. All right. So,
but as prisoners still deserve basic human decency and proper medical treatment. So I have absolutely no qualms in saying I hope that she gets approved.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited to hear the follow-up on this one and see, if it does actually get approved.
All right, y'all. I'm going to step out and get ready for Behind Open Doors.
Okay.
So if y'all want to hang out with the entertainment and news or the sports stuff, or if you want to let Marla go on a rant,
I'm good at those.
But I'm going to go ahead and step out and get ready for Behind Open Doors. I'm going to call this the season premiere, or at least the 2022 season premiere of Behind Open Doors. So hope you'll stick with me when I come back in about 35 minutes. See y'all later.
Bye, Jeannie. Great show.
Bye.
Okay, you torturing me with sports for it first, or what do you want to do?
No, that's not what's up next. I'll let you go. I didn't see any. I didn't actually even see any sports, and I didn't gather any. So we've got.
Jeannie added some at the very last minute, but that's fine. If we can skip sports, I'll skip sports.
Yeah, I had one of those days where I was not able to spend a lot of time preparing. So we've got what's here, and we're moving on to Jeopardy, and I'm gonna switch the order that she put these in. We'll start with the positive news first, and then we'll get into the second one. So. Amy Schneider becomes first woman to break the $1 million mark on Jeopardy! Schneider had already made history as the first trans person to qualify for the quiz's show's Tournament of Champions. She has now won a total of $1,019,600. What do you know about this one, Marla?
I mean, there's not much to say about it other than she keeps on winning because she's one smart person and one smart woman. And as I mentioned last week, I believe I mentioned it last week when we brought up Amy Schneider. There's a whole bunch of backlash about this and backlash about she's stealing titles from biological women as if, it's so misogynistic. It almost claims that AFAB people are not as intelligent as AMAB people. It's all rooted in misogyny. And she keeps on winning. And despite what these people are saying, Larissa Kelly, the former champion, completely supports her and is completely being an absolute champion about telling all of the transphobes to, bug off.
Yeah, and I just love that point that, these people come in with this white knight mentality that they're going to stand up for women, and in doing so they basically call them stupid, basically say you're not as smart as men are, because now that trans women are allowed to compete as women as they should, it's going to take all the titles away from women. And it's just like, so you're coming in to quote unquote protect them and just completely throwing them under the bus, just being as misogynistic as you possibly could. It's
infantilizing on top of it.
Then we moved to the one that was really surprising to me, and I I'm sorry, I don't know any of the follow up on this. What is happening with this one, Marla? Record-breaking Jeopardy sensation Amy Schneider robbed at gunpoint. Champion
So
Amy Schneider was reportedly robbed at gunpoint in Oakland, California. Well, it's Oakland, so that's not super surprising. But do you know more about this one?
honestly, I saw this a week ago when it happened, and I have not seen much follow up. I know they are looking for the suspect. It happened January 3rd. Um, and all Amy really had to say about it was she wrote, "Hi, all. First off, I'm fine, but I got robbed yesterday, lost my ID, credit cards, and phone." And that's pretty much all she wrote. She wrote that she wouldn't be able to continue. I think she had some thing where she like was sort of um, doing a play-by-play every night of the show, and she skipped it that
Mm-hmm.
night, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But she's gone back to, winning and winning and winning. They just, as far as I know, have not found the culprit.
So it sounds like it was just a wrong place,
Random.
wrong time, random incident of a mugging.
Yeah.
Well, that's, I don't know. That makes it pretty neutral. It's just sad to hear that it happened to her, at the kind of the peak, when she's doing so well. I hope it doesn't affect her performance.
You should not be allowed to rob anyone within the first week of the new year. You can't start anyone's year off like that. The punishment should be like 3 times worse.
Right? Yeah, there should be an anti like I know The Purge is just a dumb movie franchise, but there should be like an anti thing of you cannot, kill or rob or harm anybody in the first month. Like it's just very, very bad. Like you will be
It's much worse.
yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be thrown in a hole for a long, long time if you do it within that month, Otherwise,
Someone
like you go back to normal sentencing, but if you do it in January, it's just like that's the pinnacle of crime.
someone stole our packages today. And I mean that's at this like that's it was a brand new Instapot slash air fryer, and it is gonzo.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, that's a life sentence as far as I'm concerned. But when you serve that life sentence, if you want gender affirming surgery, it is all yours.
and that reminds me, I didn't make the point of it. I will never say that all trans people are great or good. Like
Mhm.
we're that's
People.
what goes with part of the normalization is we're just people like everybody else, and it's not like we're saying in any regard that all of us are saintly. There
Hmm.
are some bad seeds mixed in with us, just like anybody else. Like you said, we're
Yep.
people.
Yep.
We're flawed, but oof, yeah. All right. Um, the pod. Let's see. No, did I miss the headline here when I scroll down? Um, the podcast will interview queer trailblazers in the
Mm.
community. Do you know what this one's about? A Netflix show?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, so it apparently previewed today. I was gonna try to watch it before the show, but I did not get there. The podcast is called The Gay Agenda, which I love that title. Um, it's podcast through Most, which is the home to Netflix's LGBTQ story writing.
Okay.
Um, I have the synopsis here in case anyone's interested.
Oh yes, please.
The Gay Agenda, produced by Most, the home of LGBTQ storytelling, the new podcast takes an entertaining and honest look into the lives of LGBTQ plus creatives at the top of their fields across different industries and celebrates their success stories in the community through a loving and humorous lens. Sounds good to me. Is created by it's created by lesbian actress and singer and songwriter Jasmine Savoy Brown, as well as a a non-binary actor, comic, and playwright Liv Hewson. I am excited. I'm definitely going to watch it. I do want to say this, as I say with everything. Netflix putting this up does not undo what they keep doing with Chappelle and, I mean, mostly Chappelle. They're even doing more Chappelle. This does not undo it. You can't do these good things and then do harm and be like, this is fair. That's not how any of this works.
Yeah, because the main point you made is like the Chappelle things actually do harm to the community and and lead to harm to us, by
Mhm.
perpetuating the lies and the negative stereotype. What is that? Hold on a second.
The
It's gotta be, but where the hell is it coming from? Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah,
gone?
it was something on this tab, some kind of autoplay ad thing, which is wonderful. Um, okay, that's awesome. One of the things that and this is getting kind of tangential, but I just found some fun content recently that's trans related. I believe her name is Jordan Gray
Mhm.
that wrote a she was actually on The Voice UK,
Mhm.
and she wrote a mini series that is featured on Comedy Central on their website. Each episode's only 5.5 minutes long.
Oh, is it the one you sent me?
Transaction.
Oh my god, it was so good.
It's really good. It's funny that y'all have to watch it. I'll put it in the chat in a minute. It's very funny and it's really fun to watch. It's interesting in this time where we're trying to do all this stuff for trans visibility and all this stuff, that a trans woman would write herself her own miniseries and write herself as such a despicable character.
Yeah.
But it really works, and it's really funny to see. Did you have any other thoughts on it?
I mean, I thought the same thing. I was like, is this positive or is this not positive? But it's positive in that it shows that we can make fun of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're not, these people are out here like acting like we're all serious and like all we're trying to do is force them to get our pronouns right. And I'm like, that's not what's happened. Like, that's not us.
Mm-hmm.
We are individual people. We are funny. We are more than capable of knowing the things about us that are maybe a little weird or maybe a little, peculiar to some people or whatever. And we can find joy and laughter and fun in them.
Mm-hmm.
We're just asking for respect. And stop abusing us. That's all we're asking.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I do like the fact that this does point out the normalcy of trans folks. Like, there are crappy trans people, and
Yeah.
it shows a lot of her personal flaws and just puts them out there on display. I'm sure that's not the way Jordan is, or maybe it is. She's just exaggerating things. Who knows? I don't know her personally, but like I said, it was just an interesting thing to see, and I do like
Mhm.
that aspect of presenting like real trans people, and not perpetuating just some kind of narrative for the sake of what was it, on this show that we covered, someone saying that, like, pushing back about how the narrative is always the same when someone identifies themselves as gay. It's always that a woman is hitting on them and they have to say, no, I'm gay. Like that's
Mhm.
the only way to represent the narrative of coming out to somebody.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, it's the same thing, sort of. I mean, every single trans story that I've ever seen is like, it's all, you know, fight, 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 which we do and we have to, but there's never stories about just us living our lives. And that's why I liked this. I mean, she works in what, like a gas station, like
just a small convenience store. Yeah.
convenience store or
Hmm.
something.
Yeah, and it's funny because like her coworker, her best friend, like gives her crap for constantly bringing up the fact that she's trans and throwing it in his face. It's just this other level of self-reflection on the issues
Mm-hmm.
that are going on that are really kind of funny. Of
Yeah.
like, this is sort of what a trans person could be, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
um, you know, so cis community, count your blessings that we're not all like this, I guess. So now we're moving on to Drag Race. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that's one that a lot of people in our community have some strong opinions about. Drag
Yeah.
Race Season 14 Queen says, Transtastic new era is a journey to be seen. What is going on here? And is this positive, maybe?
It's both positive and negative
Okay.
because the article said that they interviewed them before the season. So it was before all of the turmoil that a lot of us have been discussing um, the past month or so. If no one knows, season 14 of Drag Race has two uh, trans queens of color. There's Kerry and there's Cornbread. And basically, in this interview, they were like, "This is, the future of Drag Race. How important trans women, especially Black trans women, and um, just Black trans people in general, have been to the drag community and how much they've influenced the art form." So all of dat was great, and I absolutely agree. But this was before all the turmoil with, they put on this cis het white man onto the show, into this queer space, with the possibility of winning millions of dollars performing a queer art form, when this show has so continually um, been been exclusionary of other queer people. For the longest time, it was exclusionary of trans women. RuPaul's, used to throw around the T slur and used to not allow trans women on the show. Um, Still does not on the American main stage ones. No AFAB um, queens or kings.
Hmm.
Um, no one non-binary. It's just, this season did a good thing by having Carrie and Cornbread, but when RuPaul then puts this cishet white man in there and has all of the PR focus on him instead of the two of them, that's where the issue comes in for me and a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of what I've heard. I've never been a fan. I've never watched really, but
Mhm.
yeah, just hearing all of the exclusion and the gatekeeping within um, an LGBT space is it's
Yes,
just
and
that kind of stuff just always blows my mind.
so willing to allow non-queer people into that space to the highest level of that. Like, sure, non-queer people can do drag. Like, no one's saying that, but to allow them into, like, the one majorly known queer space on television with the chance of winning millions of dollars off of a queer art form, and you've been so exclusionary of other queer people, that does not sit right with me.
Yeah, no, it sort of breaks my heart, and that's one of the things that just infuriates me the most is when we see gatekeeping and exclusion from within our own community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I constantly say we got to row in the same direction. We've it's not like any group or any greater group of the LGBT community has reached some level of just kind of perfection in the way they're treated. We're all
Yeah.
still fighting. Um,
But I
eh,
mean, this is just an example of people willing to throw trans people and everyone else under the bus if it means blending with cishet white
mhm.
society.
Yeah, yeah, bully behavior. You
Yeah.
step on the ones that are less powerful than you. You just
Hmm.
you use them as your stepping stone, literally stepping on them to get to the next tier. Not literally, obviously, but I had an interesting thing this weekend. I was at a drag show, and there
Hmm.
was a woman that was introduced as a trans woman, and
Hmm.
then the next performer after her was a man who was her boyfriend. And and it was very interesting to see the couple. And then the great
Yeah.
thing on top of that, to just even add more, another layer to it, he performed with a full beard and full makeup and
Yeah.
you know, the sexy clothes. It was
Bearded
really
bearded
interesting.
bearded drag is much more popular than I ever thought it would be. Glitter beards are a thing.
Well, glitter everything, yeah, yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
it was just really cool and refreshing to see, you know, that just there was so much about that dynamic that was fascinating and interesting to see. And it's just like, yes, there we go. Like, you know, break out of the just the okay, drag
Yeah.
has to be this one narrow thing, and that's it.
It's never been that though. It is I mean, I'm not a big drag person, but I've done a decent amount of research on drag history, I've had, to talk about it on my TikTok and all this other stuff. And, I have lots of friends who are into drag, and it has always been chaos incarnate, which is why it's so great. Like, there's so many different types of drag, but RuPaul just kind of like cis washed it and whitewashed it and het washed it and put it for, consumption. And I think we have to remember, and maybe he had to do that to get it, on TV, but we have to remember, and someone else said this, RuPaul is a boomer, and RuPaul's goal is always going to be to make the most amount of money. I don't think he cares that much about the queer community. You heard it here. Marla does not think very much of RuPaul. And
Well,
you can write that on my gravestone.
yeah, someone very, very close to me has a similar opinion on it. Just a quick little kind of tangential poll here of you, Marla, and the audience. Have
Uh-huh.
you ever been has it ever been suggested to you early on, pre or during early transition, that maybe you should
No,
just do drag instead? That maybe you just need to do drag and sort of have that outlet for getting it out of your system.
I never had it suggested to me that way, but definitely, literally, when I first asked my mother or told my mother, she was like, "So you're like a drag queen?" Like, doesn't even understand the difference. And I'm sure every single trans person, especially trans feminine people, have had at some point, they're like, "I'm trans," and someone goes, "Do you watch RuPaul's Drag Race?" Like, it's literally like, I don't think there's anyone who has not experienced that.
Sort of like the old thing of like someone yeah, someone saying they're gay, or you know, someone who comes in as black, and they're asked like, oh, do you know like this other
This
famous
other person,
black
yeah.
person, or whatever person in your same community, like you got to all know each other, or at
Yeah.
least be fans, right?
But I mean, the thing is, like, drag is not, I mean, it's in the queer community, but it's not in the trans
No.
community. I mean, there are trans drag performers, but for the most part, at least today, it's cis gay men.
Hmm. Yeah, I've never drawn the connection, but there were two things that were asked or suggested to me that fell flat on the same plane. I was asked by my therapist, which is this will suggest to you, Marla, a lot about how my experience was with my therapist once I came out, and really
Hmm.
was starting to understand my identity. She asked, why can't you just wear like pink men's shirts or floral men's attire? And at that point, I couldn't even, I was so far from even identifying as trans that I couldn't articulate why that didn't work. But in my brain, like, it made no sense whatsoever. So when a close friend of mine, a year or two ago, said, you know, why don't you just do drag and have that be your outlet or whatever, I was just, you know, it's like, because it doesn't make any sense.
Same.
It's
I mean, I had something. Luckily, I have a therapist who specializes in gender identity, and she sort of said something to me that really helped. And that's because, I'm very scientific. Like, I need everything, like, I need proof of everything. I needed proof that I was trans. And I was like, I don't know, like, is this like a cross dressing thing? What is this? What is this? What is this? And she's like, why don't you do yourself up so you look as feminine as possible, you know, and read as feminine as possible, wear men's clothes, and then try, you know, women's clothes, but don't do anything to, express your body, face, hair, anything as feminine. And of course, I preferred being in the men's clothes because it had nothing to do with clothes.
Uh-huh. That's a very cute and telling experiment. I love that.
Yeah.
That's very sweet. Yeah. I like that. All right. Yeah, we've still got plenty of time. I think Jeannie bailed out early. She must have a lot to get ready for the show. Rosa said she had that same thing a few times. Logic Buster says their parents are still calling it a phase. I missed that. Yeah, they haven't had that direct experience, but their parents are still calling it a phase. One person, SP McDill says, I had a friend send us a drag race meme Christmas card this year. Had to look it up. Rosa says, I'm like, no, I've never seen this show. Why do you ask? Make it real awkward for them.
Oh, that's a good one.
I love it.
Tell me what it's about.
Yeah.
Explain drag to me.
Kari is blown away and says, "Ugh, a therapist asked you that?" And I'm just, yeah, that was my experience. That's why I'm not still with that therapist. And I actually, I haven't gone to another therapist. I wonder if there's something in that of like that kind of fear of,
Yeah.
the resistance to my identity. I know I've interviewed so many people who have had great therapists and that have been affirming and have helped them as opposed to hindering them and holding them back. And yet I still can't get myself to go out there. And maybe I'm a little, I'm realizing right now that maybe I'm a little scarred from that.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Rosa says, my boss called it a phase.
Oh, no.
I love when other people are sharing their opinions on our lives. It's kind of great. Moving right along. Everything you need to know about Nikita Dragon as Netflix steps into the hype house. What are all these things that we need to know about Nikita Dragon?
A bunch of words that I didn't ever know before. Hype House is a new reality show. Basically, they're getting a bunch of internet influencers and creators and putting them together in a house. It's real world, but for internet personalities.
Sounds
So
delightful.
yeah, I know, right? So Nikita is trans, came out in 2015. She has, I think, what is this, 3.6 million followers on YouTube and 9 million on Instagram. She's very popular. But she's also been embroiled in a lot of controversies, especially around blackfishing, multiple times, actually. But the thing is, they're building all this drama around the show with her, like in the ads and stuff.
Okay. So she is trans then?
She is trans.
Okay.
But they're building all this drama around her, and now there are other creators, throwing hate at her and trying to dehumanize her. And basically, she's standing up and saying, this is how trans people die. This is how we die because people like you do not see us as human, and you think you can just like try to delegitimize us and all this stuff. So yeah, she's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Controversial personality.
Mm-hmm.
But in that point, she is 100% correct. When you talk about someone who's not trans in the way that these people are talking about her, like taking pictures of her with, men and, trying to like embarrass the men for being with a trans woman and delegitimizing and dehumanizing she's at much more risk when you do this crap than if you were to do it to a cis person. So cut it out.
Well, it's nice to get some publicity of a correct message.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be from her, and of course not from the television show, and that's. I have absolutely no intention of watching this thing.
Go watch Transaction again instead. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Oh, this keeps happening. All right. Pose star MJ Rodriguez makes history as first trans actress to win Golden Globes, and I think I've actually seen some of the same Jeopardy backlash against her now.
So
what's going on in this
that's
article?
what I'm waiting. I have not seen it, but that's what I'm waiting for, and I'm especially waiting for you know who to make a video about it. And that's gonna be the breaking point for me because absolutely no one fucks with MJ Rodriguez as far as I'm concerned. Like she is one of the most wonderful, beautiful, important trans icons in existence. You do not come for MJ Rodriguez. Now, and that, especially for me, who like Pose was partially what cracked my egg because it was the first time I'd ever seen trans people portrayed as, you know, joyous and um, self-loving and so on and so forth. And I'd never seen that before. So that, you know, Pose is very important to me. So she just won the Golden Globe for her role in Pose. Which is so exciting. I was so disappointed when she didn't win the Emmy award. That was, you know, and now, you know, she's won this. However, I just made a video about this on TikTok. I literally am going to post it right after this.
Okay.
There's a mixed bag here because there was a big opportunity missed. And here's why. A lot of people might not even know that she won because the Golden Globes this year, for the first time, I think ever, were not televised. They were not televised for a very good reason. It was a mix. It was a little bit of COVID, but it was mostly that the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which runs the Golden Globes, is being boycotted because it has basically zero diversity. There's not a single Black journalist that's a member of that association. So
of the foreign press,
the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which runs the Golden Globes. So they very rightfully have been boycotted, and of course they're losing a bunch of money and influence because of this, and they're 100% deserving of it. But now, because of it, unfortunately, the world did not get to see a Black Latina trans woman accept one of the highest awards in entertainment on a national stage, and that is a huge letdown. What that could have done for us, for our perceptions to the world and our perceptions, you know, to ourselves, you know, young trans people seeing this person succeed, this trans woman succeed, this trans person of color succeed, you know, above all others. And we didn't get that catharsis. And as someone who has often talked about how harmful the Tony Awards were, having to watch Lauren Patton accept an award for pretending to be trans and to gaslight everyone and be like, thank you to the trans community who hates her guts, to get to see her get that, and, you know, a trans person being denied it. And now again, when a trans person actually wins, we're denied that stage. I know it was not purposeful, but it still hurts.
So we're out of time. I think I'm going to pass it over to Jeannie about 5 minutes early so you can get her starting screen up. But I want to leave with this question from the audience based on this article here. Kari asks, Do you think if they were televised, she would have still won?
I briefly thought of that earlier today, and I am afraid to know what the answer would be. Here's what we have to find out, and I don't know this off the top of my head. I know it works with the Tony Awards. The winners are chosen way before. So I think what we'd have to do at the very least is see if the winners were chosen before the show was canceled. And I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Yeah, and it'd be great to see the tally on that.
Yeah.
We'll never know, but that is a travesty that she had this bright, shining moment that would have done a lot for our community, and it's circumstantially swept under the rug.
Instead, we got to watch her win it on a TikTok live, which is not quite the same as an international broadcast or national I actually don't know where the Golden Globes is international, right? Probably broadcast. Yeah. So
Couldn't tell you.
Big letdown.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, I'm going to wrap up the show. Thank you so much, Marla, for your wonderful insight and opinions on the articles tonight. We made it through. We ended on some positivity. It was kind of nice.
Yeah.
It wasn't all bummer because it was heavy. The first half of the show, at least, was pretty heavy this week.
It's a good entertainment section tonight. No J.K. Rowling.
Yes, and only brief mention of our nemesis, Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to pass it off to Jeannie now for Behind Open Doors. We love you. Hope you stick around for that. Her first show of the new year. Have a great night, and we'll see you soon.
Good night.